I believe this is part 3 of the building a custom set of hickory clubs. And I need to bring y'all up to date on where everything is. So I'm going to show some still photos and I'll do a voice over the top to explain what's going on in each of them, because I want to walk you through the steps after I weighed all the heads and got them sorted. I'll take you through building the shafts, what I do to get the shafts ready, how I match them to the individual iron so they'll play like I want them to play into the player, some of the finish work, and then some of the work on that set of heads to actually get them to where now they'll play as a contiguous set, not a bunch of random club heads. So stay tuned, watch through the next few frames. I'll talk you through it as we go. Let's get the loft and lie set on this iron head we're going to use for this 3-iron. First, I'm going to make a small shank that I can stick in to have a straight surface to measure against. That way I'm not using a shaft and having to try to put my gauge against a bevel. Well, that loft would work for a 1-iron, but not for a 3-iron. I'm going to have to change that. The lie angle looks pretty good, though. A little work with the bending bar, and that looks better. It's within 1 degree. I'll nudge it just a little more. Let's give the head one final weight check before I start finishing it to make sure I don't have any grinding left to do. Well, the head cleaned up nice, but I want to darken that stamping just a little bit. That's better. Doesn't look new, but it does look like it's been well maintained. Now let's go ahead and clean that hosel out really well with a wire brush. When you buy shafts from one of the shaft makers, it's going to come as a raw shaft. This came from Odie and Tad, and you're going to have to work it down if you want anything more than the default flex. What you see is where I have worked this down to 325 cycles per second, which is the flex I want in that 3-iron. I've cut it so that the entire club is 38 inches, and I've labeled it as a number 3. Then I've finished the shaft down to get all the marks out of it after working that. One of the things you have to do is to work this tenon portion down to where it fits the hosel of the club that's going on it. Now you can see I've got to remove all the tool marks by sanding. One of the things that I think is important in building a hickory set is to ensure that the shaft flexes in the natural plane or flex plane of the wood. I do this by putting it in the vise and then rotating it a few degrees each way until I find where the head travels straight back and straight through, or as close as possible, until it stops. That ensures if I'm taking a short swing or a small swing chipping that the head doesn't do something funky, because I'm trying to force it out of its natural plane. Now that I've got the relationship between the natural flex of the shaft and the head face correct, I'm going to go ahead and drill that pinhole so I don't lose it, and try not to wake my dog Loki at the same time. I won't make you set through every single iron in the set. That gives you a good idea of what goes into building one. You know, you start with a raw shaft, you have to work the shafts in. I do the entire set at one time and I just mark the links. I don't cut them yet. That way, as I'm working them down to get the flex I want and get the flex point where I want, if I screw one up one way and it's a little stiff, it's a little lax, I can move it in the set and still use it. And I just trim it a little longer and put it in another iron. That's kind of how the way I work through and get to where I'm going. As you can see, it's a lot of work to go from a raw shaft that, you know, would fit readily into a reproduction head, I'm sure, because that's where they're kind of made for, but they don't fit into the older ones as much. You have to kind of size them down and get them to fit into the ferrule or the hosel. And I also try to give you a good idea of the work that goes into getting the head. I don't try to make a head look new, but for this set for Andy, I probably more time into these than I would have into my own even. Just getting them where they still look old, but they look well taken care of. I also showed you some of the grind marks and stuff where I'd taken some weight off some heads, some pictures of what I do to get the lofts and lies where they need to be so that it'll play as a contiguous set. And I purposely picked different head shapes in this set to fit, like in the mid irons, the long irons, and then the short irons, scoring irons. I wanted each one of those types of heads in that position because of the characteristics of the head. You know, the Diamondback's a lot of muscle behind the hitting area in like the 3 through the Mashie, and then from the Spade Mashie up through the Niblick, Give me something that's got a flange on it. The Niblick doesn't have a flange. I didn't have a flange Niblick to use, but that Niblick is money. That thing is really, really heavy. I'm not going to mess with trying to put a flange on that Niblick at 48 degrees. I'll probably take another club, maybe even a mini waffle, and fix it to 52 degrees and make a sand wedge out of it, as I've shown y'all I do with the tungsten and JB Weld on the back, and give him a good nice sand wedge in that set that he can play. The set's coming together nicely. I've got like 3 more shafts to go through and the heads to go through, and each time I go through I make sure I have them correct. One thing is I go ahead and drill the pinholes now, and I'll show you the reason for that on another video. I actually use that to suspend the shaft by while I'm applying the finish and all. I put a little hook in it, and then I can hang it on a wire to dry. That's the reason. Take care. I hope you enjoyed this episode. When everything moves along, I guess the next setup will be the gripping and that type of thing, and maybe some stuff around the finish and how I finish a club. That'll come next. Have a good evening.